Well, the idea of Krishna West has some similarities to the LOFT program. I mean, you're familiar with Deva Amrita Maharaj's LOFT program, in that we present Krishna consciousness in such a way that the Western people feel comfortable with it. I mean, for example, there's many aspects, or at least external aspects, that are not eternal aspects of our movement. The devotees are very attached to, things like dhotis and other things like that, that are quite shocking for Western people. I mean, I always tell this story, which I can tell now because you're having this video, is my first impression of the Krishna conscious movement. In about 69, I walked into my first temple in Boston, Massachusetts. And they put me in the basement sleeping. There was no heat in the building. Of course, that's not exactly Vedic. But there was no heat in the building. And then I, woke up from Mangal Arati, which was all right. And I asked, where's the bathroom? And they said, well, the toilet is right here. And I said, well, where's the toilet seat? Because they had this Indian idea that toilets were meant to be stood on instead of sat on. And so I was shocked, how am I not going to fall into it? And then I asked, where's the toilet paper? And they said, use your hand. And I didn't even know what that meant. And so then after that, the water was cold. They said, Prabhupada said you're supposed to take a cold shower. It's good for your health. But in Boston, the cold shower meant at freezing temperature because in the middle of the winter and the devotees couldn't afford a heater. So I took a cold shower in that. And then I walked up to the temple room, freezing to death in the middle of the winter because the devotees couldn't afford heat in the building. And I saw the devotees jumping up and down in front of some figures on the altar. And as I mentioned many times before, that was like the Indiana Jones Temple of Doom movie. And not only were jumping up and down, but there were other things like men were on one side of the room, women were on the other side of the room. And from a Western perspective, that's kind of weird. From our perspective in Krishna consciousness, that's maybe not considered so weird. I mean, because there's, in one sense, we've integrated a little bit too much of modern Indian culture than we need to. I mean, ancient Indian culture is actually quite wonderful because it's based upon mutual understanding between men and women and varnashram, in which all the different varnas, they respect each other. But modern Indian culture is based on a very hierarchical understanding where if someone is younger than you, someone was initiated just before you, or if someone is a woman, you're supposed to discriminate against them. They're supposed to actually serve you and shut up. That's unfortunate that ISKCON has integrated that into their culture. So anyway, they were dancing up and down in front of the deities. They were running around in circles around a bush, bowing down to a bush, which happened to be Tulsi Devi. I found out later on, after 2 years, and then it was just like incredibly weird, and wearing bed sheets with bald heads. I mean, from a Western perspective, try to understand, if you look at us from an outsider's perspective, in many cases we look extremely weird. I mean, even if you look at the dhotis that we wear, I mean, at least the household dhotis and the brahmachari dhotis, they look to a certain extent to be adult diapers. You understand? Just the way they're tucked in and everything like that. South Indian dhotis don't look like that, but North Indian dhotis do look like that. So that's what people see. And, when I first joined, I mean, they thought I was a little gay because I was wearing a dress. People on the street accused me of that. I mean, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but they just thought that. Or they thought I was weird, or people told me to get a job. And it took a lot of determination to actually join the movement, and the only thing that got me to join was meeting Prabhupada personally. Otherwise, the cultural difference was such a barrier that I really was avoiding devotees for about 2 years, from 1969 to 71. So finally, 71, I met Prabhupada, and as soon as you meet Prabhupada, you're ready to do anything. Prabhupada says, shave your head, shave your head. Prabhupada says, cut off your leg, you'll cut off your leg. I mean, it's just like, and that was Prabhupada. I mean, it's like Jesus Christ, meeting Jesus Christ, saying it's as difficult for a rich man to go to heaven as a camel to go through an eye of a needle. and everybody was ready to drop everything to serve Jesus Christ, his original apostles. So meeting Prabhupada was like, or, I don't want to say better than meeting Jesus Christ, but, in one sense, it was like meeting the Messiah. That's an interesting word, the Messiah, the Savior, the Avatar, Shaktavesh Avatar. So that's one reason why a lot of people joined in the 1960s and 70s. Another reason was the culture then was more of a hippie culture in which people were dressing to a large extent in a very strange fashion. I mean, it wasn't considered unusual for men to have flowers in their hair, to wear all sorts of different types of ethnic dresses, and just about everybody was weird in the 1960s. I mean, it's hard to picture that nowadays when people are much more conservative. So there weren't the same cultural barriers in the 1960s that we have now. Now society has tended to become much more conservative in many ways. And so for people to think of looking like us or following some of the rituals that we do, it's kind of frightening. They may accept our philosophy, and the philosophy is, it's perfect philosophy, but they have a hard time accepting us externally. Our whole structure, the way ISKCON is presented, everything from the chauvinism to the dress to everything else. So the idea of Krishna West is to present Krishna consciousness, the essence of Krishna consciousness, in such a way that Westerners can accept it. And in one sense, Krishna West is more conservative than the Loft program, much more conservative. Because Krishna West, we're not going to have yoga or any of these things that really have nothing to do with Krishna consciousness. Because yoga, just to let you all know, the modern system of yoga is not the ancient system of yoga. The ancient system of yoga, taught by Patanjali, only encompassed two postures. In the modern system, they have hundreds of different postures taught by different people. In fact, I even have some disciples who are expert in yoga. And, of course, the Loft program uses yoga as a sort of bridge to bring people to Krishna consciousness. But we're not going to employ any of those techniques like bridges. What we're doing in Krishna West is the philosophy and the chanting and the prasadam. And the prasadam, of course, will not be usually ethnically Indian prasadam. It's going to be prasadam or types of food that people can relate to. For example, we find sometimes devotees think that somehow or other Indian recipes are better than Western recipes. And they go out in the street and they distribute gulab jamuns to people, which, people just freak out if they get a gulab jamun in their hand. So, we would prefer to distribute cookies to people, because everyone can relate to cookies or crackers or something like that. So, it's not just because something is Indian that makes it better or more Krishna conscious. Prabhupada never said, I came to America or whatever to teach people to become Indians. He came to teach people Dharma or Krishna consciousness. So, and Prabhupada, there's many letters. I mean, of course, people are arguing pro and con Krishna West. Each have their own quotes from Prabhupada that they use, if you probably read. I mean, when they say different shlokas for different folks. So if you go into Prabhupada's letters, you can prove a lot of different things, and some of them are very much opposing each other. However, Prabhupada wanted us to make the whole world Krishna conscious. And as the Vedic injunction says, palena parachiyate, you should judge something by the results. In other words, if by Krishna West we can make people Krishna conscious, then that should be accepted. Just like Prabhupada accepted devotees going out with wigs to distribute his books, wigs and Western clothes to distribute his books, because more books were distributed. So that's the idea.